Hi, writers. I realized just today that the Screencast-O-Matic software that I use to record my videos is now wanting me to pay to do it. So I'm going to try this live streaming video to see if I can give you a bit of information on doing some research for your media critique essay. So as you may have seen, we have changed the type of assignment you're doing for essay 3 to one that is a media or art critique. So we are asking you to find a favorite or maybe least favorite piece of art that can include everything from a poem, a book, a movie, a trilogy of movies, a TV series or episode, a song or an album, or a video game. And you are going to push past review and try to do something that analyzes, evaluates, and interprets that piece. So that can mean that you are doing things like doing some research. So, for instance, I'm going to be posting on Blackboard soon a video, an essay example of a media critique that I wrote for this because this is the first time we've done it and there are no samples that we have specific to this assignment. So I wrote one and I wrote it on a 2001 song by Natalie Merchant. And as a kind of time estimate for the time that it took me to write this, it was about a 6 to 8 hour endeavor from the time that I started to think about what I wanted to write about to listening to the song, reading the lyrics, rereading the lyrics, and then doing research on the artist, the time in which it was written, reading other reviews, and then writing the actual essay. It took me about 6 to 8 hours, and I'm still not completely done. I'm having Aaron take a look at it and give me some feedback. So that's just kind of a know your timeline, and you know that the essay is not due for a couple weeks, but one of the components of research is to not to slap it together at the last minute, but to take some time. And a lot of that entails thinking about your topic and hopefully picking one that you know you're going to like, that you're going to really get excited about. And I've had a few students tell me, I really like this album by this artist, or I'm really interested in diving into this movie because I just didn't get it. So being able to find something that you know will keep you engaged. And then you begin by, like I said, maybe rewatching or rereading whatever you're going to be writing your essay about. And then you begin to do some outside research. For sure, one of the pieces that you use as a source, and the minimum is two, is to cite the piece that you're critiquing. So for me, I'm going to be citing the song by the artist. So that will be in my works cited page. And I'll be referencing specific lyrics, specific lines that I want to try to analyze and interpret in order to better understand the piece. So that will be one source. But I think I ended up with maybe around 8 different sources because I did research on the artist herself. I did research on how other entities like newspapers or music magazines reviewed her album when it first came out, and it came out in 2001. So that's, again, the beauty of doing a media critique is you can go back in time quite a bit and review pieces that have been around for a long time. And you can even ask yourself, is this piece still relevant? 20 years have passed. Does it still speak to me? And if so, why? And usually, if a piece lasts throughout many decades, if not centuries, it means it is a classic. It is something that could be considered a long-lasting piece of art or an artifact of art. There are songs from my high school days that I loved, that I danced to, and they made me feel a certain way. But hearing them now, I'm like, oh, that was a silly lyric, or this sounds like everything else that came out around that time. And so you can start to kind of winnow away the good and the bad. So as you do your research, you are, again, most likely using Google to find resources and reviews, but don't forget that there are lots of other resources available to you, including books. So use the library catalog, whether that's through Western or your own public library, to maybe find a book or a chapter in a book that could be useful. I know that there are lots of books written about, the 100 best television shows or the 100 best albums, and you might be able to find a review or critique in one of those. The idea of podcasts and people being interviewed on podcasts, you might find that the artist that you're interested in writing about has been interviewed on a podcast, or they've given interviews to various entities. TED Talks, YouTube videos, documentaries. There are some artists I know I watched recently with a girlfriend who's about my age. We watched the Alanis Morissette documentary on HBO because we were both big Alanis Morissette fans when we were in college. So you might have a documentary that you can reference. Again, that could be also interviews with other people. Might be less relevant to this particular assignment unless you're interviewing a local artist or somebody who's written about the piece, but that's always an option as a source material. So being able to push yourself beyond just a Google search doesn't mean you have to use other things for this particular essay, but it's nice to be able to expand beyond what's at your fingertips with Google. And then I reference databases, and I have linked a video from the library's website about how to access databases. Your student fees and tuition help to pay for databases. We have access to about 120 some of them. And databases are repositories of information that have been vetted. They're more sure-proof to be credible, trustworthy, current. And so the ones that the librarians and myself usually refer you to are the things like EBSCOhost, Academic Search Premier, SIRS, Issues Researcher, Opposing Viewpoints, LexisNexis. Those are kind of 4 nice, broad, general spectrum databases that have great information in them. When I get into them, I always do a full text search. I usually limit the amount of years that I want to read. So if I know that my album came out in 2001, I don't need any results that go back before that. I know 2001 to current. That sometimes eliminates some of the information that I might find. So there is a video posted on this week's folder on how to access those databases, and they're not required, but they're a good thing to know of because you are likely going to have some assignments in future classes that require you to do scholarly, peer-reviewed, or database research. Those are all one and the same term for doing research. And make sure that you're keeping track when you find information from other sources. What I usually do is I keep all my URLs. So if I find a website I like, I keep a document somewhere where I've pasted all my URLs so that I can quickly go back to them. And then I start trying to format them into MLA format. And I use either a site like EasyBib or OwlPurdue to do that. If I'm using a database, one of the advantages of that is they have cite this buttons that make your citations much, much easier. And we've already done some practice with introducing sources and citing material. You did that with your last essay, and you're going to do that again with this essay. So you're going to apply incorporating outside material into your sources by acknowledging who they're from. So for instance, in a 2018 New York Times review on Kendrick Lamar, the author said this about the current album. So you reference that so you know that your audience understands that it's coming from an outside source. It also helps to build up your credibility as a writer. Critiques or reviews are often done from one perspective, but if you can reference what other people have also said and kind of reach common ground and say, this person pointed out that the album is reflective of the global crisis of global warming, you can say, yeah, I agree with that. Here's the pieces of evidence that support that. So that's kind of a rough overview of doing some research. So pick something you like, start rewatching it, rereading it, start doing some research on the author or the creator and the time in which the piece was released and what other people have had to say about it, and keep track of your sources so that you can do your citations more easily down the road. So I hope that works. And if you have questions, let me know. Thanks.